Hi, I am Andrea Hazard, author of the Step-by-Step Reading Program. This program can be used by parents who want to enhance their child's learning, homeschoolers, tutors, and classroom teachers. In this video, I'm going to describe the structure of the program and how to use it. I'll start by giving a bit of background on how I came to write the program. I became interested in reading education over 20 years ago when I discovered my daughter was failing first grade reading class. Her teachers were using whole language instruction, despite ample scientific evidence available at the time that this approach does not work. I decided to teach her to read myself, using a program that uses scientifically proven techniques. This program had no beginner readers to accompany it, so I took a stab at writing my own. This endeavor might never have gotten anywhere if not for a chance encounter with a person who had written his own reading program called abcdarian. He asked me to write 10 storybooks to accompany this program. My books were published under the abcdarian label for 10 years, until the curriculum was sold to a new company that wanted to convert it and my storybooks into an online program. Until then, my books had been published primarily in print form. I thought that print books and pencil and paper lessons would be better for student learning than an online program. It was only a hunch, but it was enough to make me say no to the offer to purchase my books. I have since read ample scientific evidence proving my hunch correct. In most cases, curricula that do not involve using a computer are better for student learning. In The Digital Delusion, neuroscientist Jared Cooney-Horvath describes several reasons why educational computer technology, or EdTech, may lead to poor learning outcomes. These include the screen inferiority effect, the longhand superiority effect, and loss of attention. The screen inferiority effect results from the fact that it is harder to read content online than in print form. When we read on screen, the words constantly move, making it hard for our brains to make a mental map of where information is located. If we can't remember where information is located, we tend to forget it. Because of the on-screen inferiority effect, the format of the SAT reading comprehension section had to be changed when the test went online, such that the length of each passage read was reduced from 750 to 75 words. The longhand superiority effect results, in part, from the fact that longhand writing encompasses body movements that enhance the ability to remember information. Longhand writing also can be done using different media, resulting in transfer, which is learning the same information in different situations. Transfer has been shown to improve memory retention. Another advantage of longhand writing is that it draws on the same neural systems in the brain as reading, which means that a person who handwrites fluently will be more likely to be able to read fluently. Loss of attention occurs because educational programs offer so many choices that it is difficult to decide what to remain focused on. In fact, many educational programs have features that actively divert a student from focusing on the task at hand. For example, a pop-up box may open if a student scrolls over or clicks on a word. Even if this pop-up box contains useful information, such as a definition, it distracts a student from reading the content that they were originally focused on. It also denies them the opportunity to try to get the definition from context cues, an important strategy that skilled readers use all the time. Based on what I've learned about EdTech, I decided to create a reading program that does not use technology at all. Instead, it uses workbook and whiteboard exercises that accompany the beginner readers that I originally wrote for abcdarian. In the remainder of the talk, I will describe the overall format of this program and what a typical lesson looks like. Level A of the step-by-step reading program is divided into 10 steps, which each include an accompanying storybook. Besides the storybooks, the curriculum includes 2 workbooks and a curriculum book. The curriculum book explains how all the curricular material is integrated together, and is the first place you should look when learning to use the program. I'll explain exactly how this is done by walking you through Level A Step 1. The curriculum book tells you that the first task for this step is to complete a pre-assessment, also found in the curriculum book. Notice that this assessment has 4 parts. The first 2 parts are oral assessments that gauge how well a student is able to identify the sounds in words. First, the student is asked to say the individual sounds in a word. For example, the teacher would say the word fan and ask the student to say the sounds in this word. F, Second, the teacher asks the student to blend sounds together to form a word. For example, the teacher would say the sounds f, I, n, and ask what word these sounds form when they are blended together. These first two parts are used to assess phonemic awareness, which is the ability to identify the individual sounds of spoken language, called phonemes. Phonemic awareness is an important skill for a beginner reader to develop because letters represent sounds. Phonemic awareness is assessed in step 1 because this is a skill that should be developed early. Phonemic awareness is not directly assessed in later steps, but the teacher should still pay attention to whether a student is having difficulty hearing and identifying the sounds in words. The last two parts of the Step 1 assessment involve reading and spelling simple words. The reading task is done by asking the child to read whole words written on letter tiles. The spelling task is done by asking the child to manipulate letter tiles to spell words. Both types of tile are found at the back of the curriculum book and online at stepbystepreaders.com. Completing the pre-assessment is not essential, but it does help the teacher determine how much knowledge a student has going into a step. After the student has finished the pre-assessment, the next task is to complete Step 1, Lesson 1. This lesson includes both workbook and whiteboard exercises. To complete the whiteboard exercises, you will need a small tabletop whiteboard, dry erase markers, and letter tiles that are available at the back of the curriculum book or online at stepbystepreaders.com. The workbook exercises, which should be completed first, are found on pages 1 through 3 of Level A Workbook 1. For the first workbook exercise, you are instructed to point to a picture of a cat and ask the child what it is. They should say that it is a cat. Next, you are instructed to point to the letter C and explain that it is a picture of the k sound. Ask the child to say this sound. Ask them if they can hear the k sound in cat. Ask them to write the picture of the k sound in the space provided. Notice that in this exercise, you do not say the letter name at all. The step-by-step reading program avoids using letter names because they are confusing. The name of the letter C, for example, is not the sound that this letter represents in the word cat. It may seem difficult to avoid using letter names, but the program material explains how to do it by describing letters as pictures of sounds or sound pictures. If a child does say a letter name, tell them that for this lesson they should say the sound the letter shows instead. Once you have introduced the picture of the k sound, you will be guided to introduce the a, t, and p sound pictures in a similar manner. Then, in the final workbook exercise for Lesson 1, you will be guided to compare the words cat and cap so that the child begins to learn that sound pictures can be combined in different ways to form different words. After completing the workbook exercises, the next task is to do the whiteboard exercise described in the curriculum book. To begin this exercise, place A, C, P, and T letter tiles next to the whiteboard. Say the word cat and ask this child to say the first sound in this word and to find the tile that shows the picture of this sound. Ask them to place the tile on the board. Say cat again and ask the child to say the middle sound and to place the picture of the sound next to the k sound picture. Repeat with the last sound in cat. Point to each letter and ask the child to say the sound it shows. Ask them to say the word they just spelled and ask them to write it on the board. Next, ask the child to remove the tile showing the t sound and to put the tile showing the p sound in its place. Point to each letter on the board and ask the child to say the sound it shows. Ask them to say the word they just spelled and ask them to write it on the board. Once the child has completed this whiteboard exercise, they are done with Lesson 1 and are ready to proceed to Lesson 2. All lessons in the step-by-step reading program have workbook and whiteboard exercises similar to those described here, along with other types of exercises, including matching and fill in the blank. In total, Step 1 has 6 lessons, which teach 11 sound pictures. A review follows the final lesson. The review also teaches the sight word the, which is found in the Step 1 storybook. Other sight words, including to, a, of, from, I, off, was, and put, are introduced incrementally throughout the series. Once the child has completed the review, they are ready to read the Step 1 Beginner Reader, which only contains sound pictures that were previously taught, along with the sight word the. After they finish reading the book, they can complete the post-assessment found in the curriculum book. The first 4 parts of this assessment are identical to the pre-assessment, allowing the teacher to gauge how much the child learned in Step 1. The last two parts of this assessment gauge comprehension in two ways. First, the teacher assesses how well the student was able to read and comprehend the storybook. Second, the teacher assesses whether the child is able to read two sentences found in the workbook and to fill in blank spaces with the correct vowel so that the sentence makes sense based on the picture cue. For example, the first sentence reads, "The C blank T sat on the C blank T." Based on the picture, the child should fill in the blanks so the sentence reads, "The cat sat on the cot." The teacher can use the post-assessment to determine if the student is ready to proceed to step 2 and how much assistance they will likely need to complete this level. The other steps in the step-by-step reading program build on step 1, with more complex spellings introduced after the child has learned all the simple single-letter spellings. That, in a nutshell, describes how the step-by-step reading program works. I'll end by giving a few tips on using the program. First, keep lessons short. I recommend that young students work no more than half an hour at one sitting. Second, adjust the lessons based on the child's skill level. For example, if, during a whiteboard exercise, a child struggles to find the correct letter tiles to spell a word, you may remove some tiles, leaving only tiles necessary to spell that word. If, on the other hand, they find the whiteboard exercise very easy, you may ask them to think of other words, including nonsense words, that they could spell using the tiles on hand. Third, outside of formal lesson time, you should read aloud to the child. Let them choose the books that you read and help them find books that interest them. Listening to books read aloud helps develop comprehension skills as well as a lifelong love of reading. You should also encourage the child to read books on their own and aloud to you. Do not limit them to books containing sound pictures that they have already learned, but do help them if they get frustrated or confused. If necessary, read the book for them, but no matter what, encourage them to read and praise them for their effort. That concludes my talk on how to use the step-by-step reading program. Visit stepbystep.readers.com to purchase material. You can try Step 1 for free by selecting Level A, Step 1 under the Free tab. Thanks for listening.